we'll make a start in here. I did promise the people who came to the last workshop that we wouldn't spend as much time going in the theory, we'd spend more time on the court, which I know some of you did come to the previous one, so we're just going to kind of spend a little bit of time looking at a few videos, looking at a few things that will help us with what we're going to go and do on the court later. So you see we've got quite a lot of tennis coaches, so the context is going to be very much tennis, but what we want to try and do is just give you a little bit of insight into where we come from S&C, but hopefully make it very relevant to tennis. So just give you the people, just come in, give you your little notes. This is just some headline data on what we're going to cover today. Try and get through it pretty quick. Key things, if you just look at the sort of background on the top of your notes, a couple of things I just want to say is that background to this is we have a training philosophy here at Athletic Performance Academy. It's based on the 5 S's. So if you're not sure what the 5 S's are, we're talking about suppleness, skill, speed, strength and stamina. So obviously today we're going to be focusing on the speed aspect. And we also have 6 stages of development. I would say that this presentation is mainly focused at about 8 years and above. So if you specifically work with like the real young kids, the tots at like 4, 5, 6, 7, we're probably going to be focusing it at the next level where they're a little bit more able to receive some specific coaching information. So whereas with the youngest kids you might be focused on lots of games and lots of exploratory movement, this is a little bit more targeted to what do you see, how can we correct it and make it better, but without making it too sort of overloaded with information. So just bear that in mind, the context is going to be 8 and above really, I would say, that kind of age. It says intent to improve. For me, if you're going to do a speed session, the most important thing is that you create an environment where that kid absolutely is busting their gut to go as fast as they can. However you create that environment, that's the most important thing. So more than any drills that we're going to go to in the next sort of, next part of the session, you've got to get that mindset that they want to go as fast as they can, and that's your job as a coach. I personally don't buy into the philosophy. It's their job to come self-motivated, and my job is just to give them the resources to express their motivation. At Gosling, I can tell you for a fact that we believe that if someone doesn't bring it, it's our job to help them find it. And there's a lot of coaches that I've come into to sort of work with who don't believe that. It's like, look, if they don't bring it, then they're no good to me and they're out. Which I can understand that could work if you've got a lot of numbers to work with and you can sort of like 150 people knocking on the door to take that place. But we work in a minority spot, and for us anyway, we want to develop their ability to find that motivation and keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And so, we do take that responsibility that if they don't have that intent at the moment to run as fast as they can, we have to help them along the way. Okay, so that's important. Technical mastery. I believe that you need to spend enough time in actually coaching proper movement. I don't believe that everything is based on pure talent. I don't believe that you cannot get faster. I think that you probably will not be elite if you don't have some raw material, but I think that everyone can achieve a peak performance, and I think everyone can improve their speed, and I think you do need to look at the technical aspects of speed and help them in that way. And the last thing is short to long approach. What that basically means is I believe in developing speed first and then extending it out and enduring it. I don't believe in developing a lot of general fitness and then doing speed as the very last thing that they do before they compete. I believe that starting with speed at the very beginning, and then as they get more fit, extending the amount of volume of speed that they can tolerate in their training. And I think that's very different depending on who you are. So that's the theory. A couple of things I just want to show you. If I just get to this slide, bear with me. For those of you who aren't in the field of strength and conditioning, I'm just stating the obvious. This is kind of a summary of what we do. So, strength and conditioning. Strength is fairly self-explanatory, but speed comes under this conditioning banner and stamina. So if you've ever said, well, what is strength and conditioning? That's what it is in a nutshell. That's a very simplistic way of looking at it, but those are the headline things that we're responsible for developing. And today, obviously, we're going to talk about speed. And just show you one more thing. This is kind of a more complex way of looking at it. And this would be the 5 S's, the suppleness. These are all our skills that we develop at our youngsters. And then we've got our speed, our strength, and stamina. And power is just an expression of strength with speed. So again, if you're talking about what those 5 S's, suppleness, speed, strength, stamina, and these are our skills. Okay, so that's just a quick summary of it. And then I guess the question I like to always ask tennis coaches whilst you're here, is whose job is it to improve the speed of our tennis players? Like, typically that is a big debate that we get in the community here. It's like, well, so and so is not very fast, and then they go to the S&C coach and go, make them faster, make them move better on the court. I just thought it was an interesting debate, and the best answer that I've ever had is from someone called Louis Kaya, who said that the tennis coach is the person who needs to be able to improve their movement on the court. But without the help of the S&C coach, they won't be able to do it for a game, a set, a match, a tournament, and the whole season, because they won't have the work capacity to sustain those quality movements. But I would say first and foremost, if you don't know the movement requirements of the sport of tennis and what international level movement looks like, you need to go away and find out, because first and foremost, tennis coaches are responsible for knowing that. And if I just show you this slide, this is what you get on your tennis coach's qualifications, isn't it? This conformity, path angle, speed of racket, and effectiveness of the ball. All I would say, guys, and just a quick summary on this, if you don't know how to set up properly, i.e. footwork, i.e. speed, then everything else falls apart. It starts with mindset to give you 100% intent to move fast, and then obviously the setup comes next. If those things are not in place, the timing, the feeling, the mechanics and the bodywork is secondary. These things don't happen effectively. So that's why we really need to talk about speed, and that's why you're here, because you know that if you're not fast and you don't move well, things start to go the way you don't want them to. So that's just a quick summary. And then obviously warm-up wise, I'm not going to go into it today. We went into it in detail the last presentation, but I have recorded the Gosling Tennis Academy warm-up on YouTube, so when I email you some notes, I'll just send you the link, so it saves you us all going through it and saying, like, this is a warm-up, blah blah blah. So I'll just give you an example of this on the internet, so you can just look at it, all right? And it just goes through it, but hopefully you'll notice that we're starting to develop those skills that you saw earlier, like balance, coordination and reactions, which for me is kind of a fundamental thing that we have to keep hammering, especially with our young children. Get the skills developed to a high level in the warm-up, and then we can go into our speed stuff in our main section. So that's just a couple of things I want to say. And the last thing, just on the theory, is this is just the way that I talk about our method here. I call it straight ahead speed, first step speed and multi-directional speed. And we're going to just look at them today. So in your notes, if you go to your session plans, you're going to see that we're talking about, on the top of each column you've got straight ahead speed, and then you've got some exercises. The middle column you've got first step speed, and then obviously the last column is multi-directional speed. So all I want to do today is sort of go onto the court in a little while and just go, well look, this is what I do. And I really want you guys to have almost like a structure now that you can take away. You know, the drills that I do, you will have seen them undoubtedly before, but you might not have thought, well, where does that fit into a sort of an integrated system? And then obviously when you go somewhere else and you see another drill, you can go, well actually, that would fit really well in this box. And I'm quite a systematic coach, so I like to work that way. Other coaches are not so, you know, like that, but I think it's a good start point. And once you kind of know where everything falls into, you can sort of then work within that sort of system. Yeah, so I think that's really what the main thing I want you to go away from today is, you know, you may not necessarily want to adopt these terms for yourself, this language, and you may not see it the way I do, but if you go away and reflect, well, how do I coach movement, and where does it fit into these different types of movement, then you've got a start point. So what I want to do is just go through some videos. We're going to have a quick look at some speed, and this is the kind of, we're going to get this one done first, because for me this is the least relevant to tennis, but it's important because it's the optimal expression of speed. You know, a 100-meter sprint race has the optimal expression of all of the qualities that you would want as an athlete to develop, from the reaction to the gun, to the explosiveness of that start, to the acceleration phase, which is all about power, to then top speed, which is all about reactive strength and that spring and that elastic energy, all the way to then maintaining the top speed for the last bit of the race, which is speed endurance. It's a fantastic expression of total athleticism, and not many people can do it well. But obviously in tennis, we don't necessarily need to spend a lot of time training it, because no one ever goes that far on the court. But what I find from working with other sports, and I work with track and field, is when you watch these guys run, the strength that they have and the posture that they have and the core strength that they have, and to be able to run well on a track for any sort of length of distance is something to watch, you know. And then when you put them on a tennis court, yeah, they're going to be awkward because they've not got the change of direction mechanics. But I think if you can think some of our young athletes, if they can learn to run well, then it's important. And this is just a couple of examples of your traditional start. We're not going to do it today, but I am going to show you a video next. You've got your standing start, and then you've got your block start. The benefit of the block start is that you've got the rear block to push against to generate power. So you're going to be more explosive off the start. A couple of things to note is we always want the front leg to be at 90 degrees. Okay, I'm not going to go too much detail today, but if you want the optimal angle to explode out the blocks, and even if you want to do it off the start, 90 degrees at the front leg. If you remember that from today, you're on to a good start. And you'll also notice that the back leg is slightly less bent, okay? And usually the shoulder is over the front hand. That's kind of as much as I want to say on it.